Hi everyone, I am Catrina McHugh and I'm the Artistic Director with a women's theatre company called Open Clasp.
And I'm Maggie O'Neill, as Lisa says. I'm a prof in Sociology at University College Cork and have a long history of doing arts-based research and had the huge pleasure of working with Catrina and Open Clasp. And still doing so.
Yeah, still doing so. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Open Clasp Theatre Company and then just connect a little bit in terms of how Maggie and I first met and started working together. So like I said, Open Clasp Theatre Company is a women's theatre company. We're based in Newcastle upon Tyne. It's a company I co-founded back in 1998. You can hear I'm a Scouser, but I've been living in the region in the northeast, should I say, for 25 years. We're a national company and more recently an international company, and we collaborate with women and girls in the community, and we work in partnership with youth and community organisations, and we try to make the best theatre we can with the aim of changing the world one play at a time. And you can hear the Scouser coming in me again, the world one play at a time. I'm just going to tell you what's something that happened to us. Like I said, we've been working for 2 decades now, but in 2014 we were very much a regional theatre company. And we were commissioned to go and work in Lower Newton Prison to support the women inside the prison to make a performance piece about their lived experiences. And for us to take that piece of performance out of the prison and tour it to men's prisons. It was a very small project for the company. We were doing something quite big at the time. So we all had our heads down, went inside the prison, supported the women who pulled on their lived experiences to create characters, to talk about issues that happened to them before they were in prison and while they were in prison. The play was called Key Change, and it was performed back to their peers inside the prison and the officers. And then the women couldn't come out the prison, so our actors were stepping into their shoes. We took it out the prison and we taught it to men's prisons. And it was a really successful project, and we're a political theatre company. We're about using the arts to make social change happen. And like I said, we were regional, known very much in the region at the time, and we thought, well, maybe this play, Key Change, is the play that can help us have a national reach so we can kick open some more doors and make change happen on a much bigger scale. We took it to the Edinburgh Festival in 2015, and I don't know whether you know the festival, but one of the biggest festivals in the world. We had no idea what was going to happen. We'd never been there before, and we won the Carol Tambor Best of Edinburgh Award, and the prize was a 3.5-week run off Broadway in New York. While we were in Edinburgh, we went into a women's prison. While we were in New York, we went into a women's prison over there too. We came back, we did our first national tour, and we started in the Houses of Parliament. We got standing ovations, not only for the show, but the process to create the show. Then in, I think it was 2017, the BBC and the Arts Council filmed Key Change, and at the end of 2017, for part of the United Nations International Day to End Violence Against Women and Girls, it went global, and we reached 27,000 people around the world, 35 countries and 6 continents. I am going to talk about the current projects, which is Rattlesnake and Sugar, in a moment, but I want to just rewind a minute and talk about when I met Maggie. So in 2012, so before all this success happened, I was working on a project working with women from minority communities who were living in the northeast of England, and I read Maggie's book, and the book is called
Asylum, Migration and Community.
Asylum, Migration and Community. And when I read Maggie's book, I needed a dictionary to read it as well, by the way, but when I was reading Maggie's book, there was words like participatory action research, which spoke to me about how we work with women and girls in our collaborative workshops. And it made me go, that's the same as how we work. It's what we do and it's what we achieved. And the other thing was ethnography, which took me a while to say it, ethnography. Now, I'm the artistic director with Open Clasp, but I'm also the playwright, and I lead on the workshops and write the plays. And to be an ethnographer spoke to me, because I went, oh, that's what I do. That's what I do when I'm working with women and girls, and that's what I do when I'm writing plays. So I emailed Maggie and went, I like you, I like your book. And Maggie emailed back and went, I like you, I know about your company, I know the work that you've done, because Maggie had seen a show that we'd done a couple of years before. So since then, Maggie came in and was an advisor around that project and helped my head. And since then, we've been connected on several different projects, and we're still connected to this day. And we're going to talk about a project called Sugar, where Maggie actually came in and worked with our women in a face-to-face way. Is it still me talking? Was it? No, you? You talk.
So we thought, you know, after having an introduction to Catrina and to Open Clasp, we've done that bit. We'd say something just to sort of summarise our abstract, really, or summarise what what the talk is about. So we're focusing, you can see that already, how creativity can work across the arts and social sciences using ethnographic, qualitative methods and interactive theatre. Because as Catrina says, you know, what I love about the work of Open Clasp and the way that Catrina works and the company works is that it is really engaged, immerses itself in women's lives and communities in a deeply respectful way. But very much, you know, like, I guess, you know, sort of ethnographic, participatory, collaborative, and deeply respectful way. And I think also what connects us is our commitment to addressing sexual and social inequalities. So, you know, the title is Changing the World One Play at a Time and working together to create change. But what underpins our work and our commitment is a commitment to social justice and to addressing sexual and social inequalities. And so, yeah, back to you.
So I'm going to talk about Sugar, which is a play that we're currently working on, but the research for the play started in 2016, and we worked with 3 groups, and this is the moment that Maggie came into the sessions with us. The first group was a group of women living in a hostel providing emergency accommodation here in Manchester. And we set up residency in the canteen, and every night the women were invited down to join the drama workshop. And after every session, a cooked meal, we sat together and ate a cooked meal, which was provided by the dedicated members of staff who support the project. And one of them is with us today, which is Trisha Duffy, who's sitting here at the front. The women created a character called Tracy, and the women created a character called Tracy, and through the creation of that character, they talked about their experience of living in the hostel, their experience of living on the street, and their experience of having time in prison. And they also talked about their hopes and dreams. And through the creation of Tracy, a safe space was supported, and the women started to share their experiences of trauma. So they talked about domestic violence, rape, and childhood sexual abuse. Towards the end of the residency, Maggie joined us and brought her walk-in workshop methodology. Yeah. And Maggie's going to talk about what happened when she joined us in the workshops.
So just to sort of kind of frame, I guess, the methods, you know, just to get you in the frame of the methods and this collaborative way of working, and then my involvement in connecting with the broader residency through over 2 days in a sort of workshop. It's really just to say that, you know, it's really important, I think, that we create space for narratives and voices of the women that we work with. It's not speaking for, it's facilitating a space for them to speak. And as I said earlier, in a really, deeply respectful way. In the case of Sugar, challenging the myths and stereotypes and stigma that homeless women and the residency, that was really apparent to me when I joined, that the work, this very deeply respectful, immersive work, generating and facilitating space for women to tell their stories, is really about enabling a better understanding of women's lives, a better understanding of what it is to be homeless, and to counter exclusionary processes and practices. So I've said that, where our methodologically, you know, we work in very similar ways, and principles of social justice, recognition, you know, and creating space for the recognition and the struggle for recognition to be articulated is really important. And I think, you know, the importance of stories and storytelling, so just to sort of pause on that for 1 minute, and the influences, I guess the kind of influences underpinning my own work are Walter Benjamin's work. You know, some of you may know his fabulous short story on the storyteller. You know, that storytelling has a primary role in the household of humanity, and there's a lovely quote: "A fragment of a story of a life can tell you so much more than 100 pages of information about a life." So the power of storytelling and the fact that we lead storied lives is so important. So collaboration, using walking, connected, kind of interconnected with theatre making, can help us access the visual, sensory, emotional, performative and kinesthetic aspects of lived experience. And the fabulous Kip Jones says, you know, traditional methodologies do not deal well with the sensory. And so that's why the imagination and creativity is so important. And of course, that's why you're here today at a methods day on, a festival day on creative methods. But also that this way of working can help us access the unsayable, you know, the kind of get to or tap into experience which can be difficult to articulate in words alone, but can emerge through other means, so through drawing, through walking, through theatre making. So I just want to speak about Faye. In the walking part of the residency, I invited the women in the workshop, you know, if they wanted to draw a walk from a place you call home to a special place, and then to mark along the route the landmarks that were important to them, the places and spaces that they might want to share. And in our walk with Faye walked from the hostel through the red light area to the town centre past Tent City. But I just want to share this with you. Faye drew a map from the direct access hostel to her special place, the park, through the areas where she works, the dark tunnels and passing cars, past the special trees she touches for luck, the outreach organisations that offer support, care, comfort and practical necessities. She talked about the split-second decision she makes as to whether she should step into a car with a stranger, and she also shared aspects of her life story, her biography. The violent father, the mother who left him with children, the boarding school she was sent to stop her absconding, the 8 GCSEs, her love of music, singing and drama, and the missing years, the people she has lost, how life has passed her by and her fear of being alone. At the end of the walk, we sat in the park gardens, her special place, drinking posh coffee, and she went back to the beginning of her life, to the child who was invited into a car, given £20, who was then able to buy batteries for her Walkman. We talked about her aspirations, her wants and desires to change, to live, in her words, a good and happy life, against the tide of her life, a tide that comes towards her, over and underneath her, often taking her feet away. So Faye led the walk. She was in situational authority. This is Faye's map. At the end of she took photographs along the way, and at the end of the walk, I quickly processed the films that Faye had her images, and then back in the hostel, she wrote really carefully on the back of each photograph the meaning that this had to her, and then she placed her photographs around her map. And so, in the next section, we just want to share the images and also a sentence for each image that Faye, so to introduce Faye into the presentation and also the dialogue. So her first photograph, first official experience here at Direct Access. This is the reception. I'd like to note the protective screen. Newcomers would think of violent residents because I did wonder why this was in place. The door of salvation, because no matter what you think of the place, no one can enter to hurt you. Once you are in, you are safe. The long path, hopefully ending the journey of other kinds, a finally here feeling. The car park that is crossed is behind a derelict block of flats. Shame, as I see it, being a lovely place. This is a place for dealers and the girls to wait. It's worth pointing out that the meeting place borders a school that is often full of children playing outside. The Apollo roundabout is an important focal point to the entire story. Each turnoff represents 9 times out of 10 what a person in this kind of life, what they're doing. Grafting, using, scoring. From here you can go to the DA, you can go to buy drugs, you can go to the red light area, you can go to Tent City. So this is like the middle bit from here. The roundabout represents something for me in each direction. The walk to the beat brings you to shady spots, especially at night. It looks totally different. I always take a deep breath and think, here we go, I hope it's over soon. Although the beat, extends further, I always feel like I've reached work at this point. The first time I did sex work was by accident. I was only very young. I was 15 and I'm 41 now. I had my very first £20 note. He just gave it me to sit in his car for 10 minutes. I loved it. That was it. I was gone. I bought loads of batteries for my Walkman. I like old school music. I was very lucky because I was never abused, like not strangers, but my dad was very violent and I had some near misses with my life when I was at home. Each day I go to work, I have to walk across the roots of this beautiful old tree, and I thank it for allowing me to walk over its legs. So a quiet and intimidating view of the back streets of this red light area. This is in the day, it's a haven when it rains, but God knows that I hate this place. Walking towards the gardens, we pass Tent City for street homeless. It's across the road. The homeless often find themselves spending time in one of these setups. I can only imagine what happens here. So finally, a shot of the gardens where our journey paused for posh coffee, deep in conversation as we were all day. A special bracelet. And the images around the route, the walk. And this is in this context, Faye is sharing the walk with the other women. So walking with Faye reinforced the experience of walking, or the introduction of walking in research as relational, revelatory, sensory, but absolutely embodied. And through her walk, we attuned to her experiences, her stories, in ways that, I think would have been hard to do in, through an orthodox interview.
So from that group, the second group that we worked with was a group, we went back to the prison, and the women in the prison met every Friday in the prison chapel, and they created a character called Julie, and they pulled on their own experiences to make decisions about significant turning points in Julie's life, and they work creatively up on the feet, and the process is democratic and empowering. And they had commonalities with the first group of domestic violence, rape, homelessness, and childhood sexual abuse. And they were curious. They asked and answered questions. So they wanted to know, did Julie's mother know that the father was abusing Julie? And then later in the workshops, the women closed their eyes and they talked to the mother. And in the silence, they found the answers to their questions. We also played and laughed, and they often broke into song. The third group was a group of women on probation in Newcastle at West End Women and Girls Centre, and they created a character called Annie, and then they called her Poor Annie. Annie meets Paddy, and Paddy beats Annie. And as with the other two groups, there was a commonality again around domestic violence. But with this group, we got a glimpse of what the state does to victimise and to re-traumatise women. Because Annie gets sanctioned, her kids are given to Paddy. She's medicated and she's often sectioned, and the sun is always grey. I then went away and wrote 3 monologues in response to what the women had said, and also in response to the Walking with Faye methodology that Maggie used. And that play, Sugar, is now in rehearsals up in Newcastle with a film company, and we're making a theatrical piece for film, and it's going to be distributed in March 2020. So you just remember that date. That's me, Sugar. And should I talk about Rattlesnake? Yeah. Okay, so a few projects to talk about. So Rattlesnake. So in between Edinburgh and going to New York, Maggie, along with other academics at Durham University, commissioned Open Class Theatre Company to create a piece of theatre to train frontline officers in coercive control and behaviours. Maggie's going to talk a little bit about where that came from, and then I'm going to talk about what happened in the project.
So the colleagues involved at Durham were Nicole Westmahl, and some of you may know Nicole's work. Her life's work really has been focusing on sexual and domestic violence. And Kate Butterworth was commissioned as the researcher on the project. Nicole invited me to get involved because of thinking about using arts-based methods to address the training of police officers in better responding to sexual and domestic violence. One thing that we discovered is that the police training consists of usually PowerPoint and multiple choice. So and obviously there are resource issues, with the sort of austerity and lots of police officers being, the kind of service being slashed. So one response to this was for Nicole to invited me to get involved in this project, and a bid was put in with the support of the Police and Crime Commissioner in Durham to the AHRC for knowledge transfer to work together with the police, Durham Constabulary, to do something, to produce something which would better train and address some of the issues of how do you train officers in responding to sexual and domestic violence. PowerPoint is not the way, and multiple choice, multiple choice questionnaire. So we commissioned Catrina and the fabulous Open Clasp, and again, coming back to the way that Catrina and Open Clasp work, Catrina made herself really, read the research, was introduced to and was able to work with, have conversations with, interview survivors who had taken part in previous research, and developed this amazing training, which had the most fantastic impact in terms of response from police officers. Do you want to say more about that process? Yeah, so like Maggie said, so my job was I interviewed the women who rang the police for help, and it happened to be women who kind of got involved in the research, and also to talk to all the academics, and also to do my own research and kind of think through what coercive controlling behaviours are. And it was in 2015, so it was coinciding with the change of law that was making coercive controlling behaviours a criminal offence. It was the first time that we'd done anything like this, so the officers saw the piece of theatre, and then we designed an interactive drama workshop, so where the officers then had to embody the women, so the victims and survivors that were in the piece, the children, victims and survivors, and also the perpetrator. And through that process of putting officers up on their feet, and every single one of those officers got on their feet, and they created still images, thought tracking, captions, and we debated and discussed the reality of living in a situation with a perpetrator of coercive controlling behaviour. So we were challenging things like, why does she go back to him? Why does she stay so long? We were looking at the voices of the children, which are often unheard of, and we were also looking at what makes somebody a perpetrator, and we were challenging that victim mentality. He can't help it because he's a victim, and that's why he does it. We were challenging patriarchy through the interactive kind of work with these officers in Durham, and that was in 2015. We then went on with that production, with that show. It was a 40-minute piece at the time, and we made it into a full production, and we added a family court scene in, because coercive controlling behaviours and kind of comes into the courtroom, and the woman becomes a victim of the state, if you like, within the family courtroom. So we put that scene as well, and we toured it twice nationally on the back of keychains. So we toured that twice nationally. We had post-show, panel show discussions where we brought experts
experts together to look at the diversity of people who were affected by coercive controlling behaviours. Then we got it filmed. Again, we were learning from Key Change, and it's about to go global. What we did with Key Change, we reached 27,000 people across the world. With Rattlesnake, what we learned from it is that if anybody watches Rattlesnake and is experiencing coercive controlling behaviours, or they've got a family member or a friend who's experiencing coercive controlling behaviours, so they think they have, this show can save lives, and we're making this available for 16 days free for everybody to watch, because we're a charity and we're a political organisation, and that's what we're motivated to do, is to make change happen. So this, like we said, is going to be available for everybody to watch from the 25th of November in line with the United Nations International Day to End Violence Against Women and Girls till the 10th of December, which is obviously Human Rights Day. And I'm going to show you a trailer of the show. I've put some cards down here, but obviously you've all sat at the top there. There is cards at the bottom for you to take away, but please, again, put this in your diary and share far and wide. It doesn't matter, it's a heterosexual storyline, but it's sexual, all sexual orientations, all genders, all cultures, all ages. It's the pattern of behaviours is what you will recognise, and therefore change can happen. So we're just going to show the clip of the trailer now.
And just before putting it on, I think I went to most of the workshops, and what really struck me was the reflection, the change, the dialogue, but also the shift in the way officers thought about coercive control and sexual and domestic violence when they saw their stories, you know, their experiences played out in front of them by workshop participants using still images, sculptural forms, you know, so you can kind of see around an issue, not just think about it in two-dimensional, but to see it and experience it. It really kind of impacted hugely and brought so much experience, so much shared experience into the workshop space.
Before you show it, I forgot to say, we also got commissioned by Cleveland Police, and we've just trained 1,000 officers, 1,000 plus officers using the film of Rattlesnake. The comparison between the Durham force and the Cleveland force, and I'm aware that we're being filmed, but I think it's okay for me to say it, the Cleveland force were much harder. There's 1,000 officers. They have just gone through a big report, which is, it says they are inadequate in all areas. And I've done this, I've facilitated this kind of work for 21 years, and that was probably the hardest project I have ever delivered because of the attitudes of some of the officers walking into that room. Misogyny and victim blaming were the two of the hardest things that we had to tackle with that show. We feel like we made a difference, and we feel like we made cultural change happen within that force, but we could see the power of it, and there's lots of different forces now across the nationally who want to use this film, Rattlesnake, and also Maggie in terms of going over to Cork and using that in police training, because coercive controlling behaviours has just become a criminal offence in 2018. So we're also been travelling over to Cork to think about how we can use that, the film and interactive up on its feet using drama techniques to make that change happen in Ireland as well. Yeah. So we'll just show the film now.
My first impression. Good looking. I want to know everything about you. I want to know everything about you. You need to learn not to overreact. And when I didn't react, I went awake and thought, game on. Where's the evidence, Susie? She loses it. It's all in his control when he decides. Do you see what you're making me do? If he decides, I'd rather we all died than let you do this to me.
So that's Rattlesnake. Please put that in your diary. Please come down and pick a card up. Please go on our website. Please join Open Clasp, be an ally. make sure that you share it far and wide. It's in English subtitles, it's in Arabic, and it's in BSL sign language as well. So we've tried on a budget to try and make it as accessible as we can, and we do have countries across the world who are then going to be, you can host a screening, you can bring people together, you can have a politics, you can have a conversation and have a debate and share, or you can watch individually. But it's important, and it's political, and it's life-changing.
Great.
Enough?
Yeah, lovely.
Enough?
So hopefully a really fantastic example of changing the world one play at a time and working together to create change across social sciences and arts theatre methods, imaginatively.
So we do have, you can clap if you want to.